Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're going into Game 2 between Wildcard Red and 100 Thieves Next, who, for the side of 100 Thieves Next after losing Game 1, they have selected Red side, so we will be seeing a side swap from the two teams. And to be fair, in the early game, as we said before, 100 Thieves Next actually found a couple of cheeky kills back onto Wildcard.
Yeah, it definitely felt like Wildcard were, kind of being very aggressive in ways that are not easy for them to necessarily do early on. When you have a little bit more gold, you have lower cooldowns, your abilities do a bit more damage, you can outplay a lot of these things. But when champions like Trundle are just going to be free hitting, you're going to be having a lot of advantages with this champion just because of how straightforward it actually is. And eventually, we saw Wildcard get to the level where they can suddenly start winning these fights regardless of, some of the champion discrepancies that they were going for. But early on, it put them in a spot where 100 Thieves Next were a lot closer than we were expecting them to be.
And I think the other thing that 100 Thieves Next can look at going into this next game, I think there might be something to take away from. Maybe it doesn't lead into an overall advantage for this series, but if 100 Thieves Next don't win this series and they go into the lower bracket, I think making a team like Wildcard, putting them toward the limits at least within the first 5 minutes of the game is something to take away, and then something to build off of. As when we look at the full 100 Thieves Next strength roster, it was Gamsu, Chad, Young, Instinct, and Busio. Not only those two players that we already saw promoted to the Academy roster, but Busio is currently a sub for the Academy roster because during the end of July, Busio got locked in into the Academy roster because 100 Thieves obviously wanted to keep him around and ensure that he didn't get picked up by another org going into the offseason. Now, Gweiss did get a chance to play with 100 Thieves Next and helped them secure the third place decider finisher against Evil Geniuses Prodigies during EGL Summer Showdown. But still, this is not the full strength roster for 100 Thieves Next. So for them, trying to come together as much as they can as a goal, as a squad, is really their goal. Whereas Wildcard Red, for them, this is going to be
a statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're trying to show that they are as, worthy of fear as a lot of people are saying they are. I feel like a lot of the Academy teams, when they were looking at amateur teams, everybody that I talked to was like, yeah, the only team that I've really paid a whole lot of attention to is Wildcard Red because they're winning everything, right? They have Arrow of former Korean fame of like KT Rolster. They have Bradley, who's been one of the best collegiate players. They have Winston, who's had a lot of opportunities to play in the amateur and academy scene as well. So there's a lot of strong members here on this team that everybody's going to be paying attention to. And the big thing that you got to do is show that you can at least hang with them before you start looking at all the other top academy teams in order to actually have an opportunity to show what you have and prove that you are yourself academy ready.
Yeah, I mean, even the starting top laner was Dokla before he got picked up for Team Liquid Academy, and now he's currently a sub over on that roster, as Dokla helped Wildcard Red win their first Tier 2 tournament in Challengers Uprising at the end of May, near the beginning of June, just a couple of months ago. Actually, it's more than a couple of months at this point. Man, wow, where did the time go, Josh? Holy moly. Anyway.
Man, 2020, 2021, it's all a blur at this point. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? That's what all of these players are trying to do. They're trying to show that they are worthy of spots in Academy and LCS. And a lot of these players are starting to show, it's like, yeah, they are super sick, right? We've been looking at Bradley as one of our top players for a long time. Everybody knows Arrow is really good, and he's committed to playing in NA still, right? We're seeing that I believe if he doesn't already have his residency, it's coming up very soon, so he's not even going to take up an import slot. And the fact that he is willing to, after not getting any offers in, at the beginning of the year, to continue playing with Wildcard Red and just stay in the amateur scene and just prove that he still has what it takes, shows a lot of dedication as well to the region.
He wants to play for NA, man. I mean, at this point, Arrow, the way he is performing and really just styling on almost every other marksman player in semi-pro and amateur. I mean, to to be fair, we have had a lot of bright young talent come through the ranks and many rosters for the past 8-9 months. I mean, look at Danny, who's now had a wonderful split over on Evil Genius's LCS roster. And Tactical, of course, also coming through the trudges of semi-pro and amateur. Now going to Worlds with Team Liquid for his second year in a row off of his LCS debut last year in 2020. There's a lot of talent here, and Arrow still wants to be a part of the pool and consider himself as an NA resident at this point by staying and locking himself in.
Yeah. I also want to give a little bit of praise to the players that we haven't talked about just quite as much, right? We didn't necessarily look at Daption all that much during the game, but he was such a pivotal part of how they were actually able to play together. We saw that he was the bulk of their crowd control, and he was consistently finding good engages. He's consistently moving around the map, and he hasn't made any large mistakes just quite yet, right? He's playing, you know, this entire thing nearly to a T, and I love watching this guy succeed because not only is he a great support, but I mean, I gotta say, guys, go follow him on Twitter. He's like one of the most wholesome players you will ever interact with, right?
Yeah.
Super humble, super adorable. There's nothing to love about this. Nothing not to love about this play.
Yeah, I mean, most notably, he got a chance to do a interview, I think, during the Challengers Uprising season earlier this year, and it was off of the back of a game-winning play that he made on Rel. And after, in the game-winning interview, he's like, I'm just trying to do my best to keep up with the team because I see myself as the worst player on the team. And I was like, dude, you're kicking ass. Why are you calling yourself the worst player on the team, man? Dude, you're so good. Don't put yourself down like that. He's very, very modest.
Yeah, a lot of hunger, too, so you know that he's nowhere near done growing. And I feel like that's one of the big things that at least I typically look for in a lot of these players. Is, you know, we see how good they are now. How much more can they continue to grow? And it's where players like NXI, I think, for FlyQuest, kind of showed that they have what it takes, right? They are still very good. They still have a lot of room to continue growing. Tenacity can be. They're now going to be playing with 100 Thieves at Worlds in Europe, so they have a lot more growing left to do. So props going out to Papa Smithy and the rest of the 100 Thieves roster for actually bringing these guys in. I feel like Daption is one of these players that a lot of people before this year weren't necessarily looking at, and now they really have to be.
I mean, it's one thing when you are paired up with one of the greatest marksman players that has ever kind of graced League of Legends in Arrow, right? But to not only learn from him, but also to hold your own as an individual in supporting this player as well has to speak volumes about not only yourself and your abilities as a player, but also your character as well, to be extremely humble in just becoming better and better. And for Wildcard Red, this whole squad has been an absolute treat to watch. Remember, the reason why they're the teams to beat is not only of their dominance throughout the entire summer split, they got the freaking Grand Slam, winning every single Tier 2 event as well. So, Wildcard now on the blue side because 100 Thieves Next wanted to opt in for the red side. We're going to see how much the style and the draft plan changes up going into Game 2.
Well, Blanc getting taken off the table for Young. It was a bit of an adaptation coming through for 100 Thieves Next, where they banned the Rise in order to pick up the LeBlanc for themselves, but there's still a lot of things that you're going to have to be very careful of. Wildcard Red have very large champion pools pretty much across the board, and I have to imagine that we're not even seeing the depth of them just quite yet, just because it's so hard to ban them out. You can get a lot of their strong picks in the first couple of meta picks that you want to end up grabbing for yourselves, and 100 Thieves now have to try and have the difficult task at shutting down what Wildcard wants to do.
Jace also being banned away, trying to eliminate a lot of the threats from Dinka's champion pool. Now, they've gotten rid of the Twist of Fate from Bradley, and they don't dodge out on the Aurelia ban either, because that is something you don't want Bradley to have in his hands if you are 100 Thieves Next. But Lee Sin, not only still a potential flex pick, but also just one of Winston's comfort champions here, is going to be first picked once again.
We saw it as their first pick in Game 1, and 100 Thieves now really have a big thing that they have to answer, because their last first pick was the LeBlanc. They had banned out the Rise, and now it looks like they are going to be the ones who want to pick up the Rise for themselves. This champion has made a lot of waves for a reason, and I don't remember who it was, but somebody tweeted when we saw a B1 Rise during the LCS playoffs, it's just like, wow, this is just how strong this champion has become. It is so pivotal to almost every single roster that plays it. 100 Thieves Next think that it's their best chance to actually find some success. And we're also seeing a very similar style of draft coming out from them right now as what we saw the 100 Thieves Academy roster play just a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, the Aphelios is something that Instinct has actually put a lot of time in, and during the spring iteration of this 100 Thieves Next roster, where they didn't even get a chance to make it into the tier 1s that would later qualify the top amateur teams, let alone getting into Proving Grounds, that roster was still going through a lot of holes that they needed to patch, but for them, Instinct and Busio, some of the brightest spots in that roster, and, you know, I bring this up a lot when talking about Instinct, but his Aphelios in one of those games against, I think, the old iteration of Zeus, they literally 2v8'd a choke point hold in the jungle, and, you know, this is definitely a champion that Instinct needs to be respected on. As Wildcard, I'm going to lock in some strong champions, the Renekton for the Brandini in the top lane, and Azir for Bradley.
Now, we did see this matchup earlier, I will remind everybody, between TSM Academy and 100 Thieves Academy, right? We saw Takeover try and play the Azir into the Rise, and unfortunately did not go particularly well. But this is a situation where if you aren't really able to punish this Azir, it's going to be very good for them later on in the game. And I feel like we are seeing a lot of similarities right now between this draft and the drafts we saw previously in the day, which makes sense. These are all strong champions. You want to pick them for your team because they're good, right? You want to make sure that you are always able to find strong avenues for your team to play through, and it's not a big surprise that a lot of these teams have settled on the same answers.
This does change up a little bit of the playstyle that 100 Thieves Next are going to be going for, because Panda now opting in for the Viego versus the Trundle means that it changes up how he wants to play out the first few minutes of the game. When you're playing with Trundle, you want to be super proactive, look for ganks with the pillar, and trying to just really get in the face of anyone that you can, because you can outstat a lot of people once you get the chomp down. You steal the AD, you give yourself, you take some back as well. But now that you're on the Viego, you're more concerned about trying to hit your first item power spike before you start really scrapping on the map.
And we'll see how effectively he's able to do that, because it is a situation where he has to go up against what is almost definitely Winston's Lee Sin, right? Another champion that wants to be very proactive on the map and can look to force some duels up against like the Rise, the Viego, and whatever it is that Dinka wants to end up playing top lane. We know how strong this champion can be early in the game, and with all of these like longer range engages taken off the table between Dinka and Gweiss, we're asking a lot of questions of how 100 Thieves Next are actually going to be getting some of these fights started.
100 Thieves Next are trying to thin down Arrow's champion pool with the Ezreal and the Ashe taken away. Ashe also not being available means that the limited amount of long range engages are kind of down in the table for Wildcard Red. And now 100 Thieves, they're buckling down on the amount of counter engage and options that they have now with this Ornn lock-in.
We've seen this a lot historically, but I'm not super convinced that this is the safest thing for Dinka to be doing, but you are kind of limited in the champions that you do want to pick up with the longer range engage. And just as we saw Haunter have a fantastic time in the Renekton versus Gnar, I'm expecting to see Brandini have a lot of success in the Renekton versus Ornn, because you are able to push Ornn around quite a bit. And okay, Arrow actually going to be going with the Caitlyn. I've been pretty convinced that this champion is a bit of a bait for a long time. It feels very good to play when you get everything working the way you want it to, but oftentimes you don't really have a whole lot to do in the mid game. Even with the new lethality builds that we're seeing become a little bit more popular, you're a little bit better in the mid game, but you are still so reliant on a single way of trying to play the game that you don't have a whole lot of flexibility. And I'm going to be very curious how Arrow is going to prove me wrong.
I mean, if there's an 80 carry in the Proving Grounds tournament that can make a champion who has had kind of an abysmal showing in the games that she has either seen, whether it's in comp or even some of the rec leagues that we've been playing in, or even solo queue, then it would be Arrow. Now, I don't know if we're going to see the lethality build, as that seems a little bit more volatile. But that'd be cool. It'd be exciting just to see people explode from Ace in the hole.
I don't hate it this game, right? Because it does give you a lot of wave clear. There are a number of squishy members that you can deal with, and Viego, every time he goes for a transform, right? Whenever he gets a reset, he locks himself in place. So there are really big opportunities for Caitlyn to get some of those traps down. That said, if you do go with this build, the only time you're ever killing Ornn as Caitlyn is if you are monstrously far ahead. And based on what we saw in Game 1, Wildcard Red can do that, but it's not something I feel like you should be playing around. You should still be looking for a lot of these early game advantages, and that typically comes through Caitlyn's Gale Force.
Well, one of the things that Caitlyn can do, regardless if it's a crit build or a lethality build, is you have the longest range effectively out of any champion in this game. 650 auto attack range means that you get to do a pretty damn good job of zoning Aphelios and, of course, Nautilus from the wave. Not many marksman players correctly use that spacing to their advantage, but Arrow, I mean, with his prestige and his competitive career, there's no way that we don't get to see that advantage being used insanely effective in this game.
Once they start marching out on the Rift, I do have to note that Arrow has gone with lethal tempo, meaning that we are very unlikely at this point to see any version of the lethality build coming out from the Caitlyn. Unlucky, no. I don't know if that's the way I describe it. I'm pretty sure it's the right decision.
Well, okay, just because it's the correct decision doesn't mean it's not the fun decision, Josh.
Okay.
So, unlucky for the viewers, as we are denied a potential lethality Caitlyn game, but it's okay. Wildcard Red, they need to ensure that they are taking these wins cleanly and in a very dominating manner to go back to, as you said, make a statement. Because Wildcard Red are here to prove that they are a team to be taken seriously, and that there's a reason why they're considered one of the favorites for this Proving Grounds tournament.
Alright, well, this is interesting. We're seeing Viego looking to start at the Raptors, and you don't typically see the mid laner going for any kind of leash early on in the game. This should allow Panda to accelerate a little bit faster, and it does mean that his topside camps, the Raptors and probably the Krugs, will be respawning a little bit earlier.
There's a little bit of trading. Gweiss taking about 200 HP worth of damage, whereas Daption is able to only suffer just about 50. Gweiss has to chug. Doesn't actually chug a pot quite yet.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
Daption? Yeah. Daption hasn't, but Gweiss definitely has, right? You start with 2 at the beginning. He's already gone through the second one as well, and that's kind of rough because there's already a sustained disadvantage coming through 400 Thieves side, because Daption, even though it's not the largest heal, he still has one on the Gleaming Quill every single time he throws it out, lands it. It's a little bit of health back for both him and Arrow.
And apologies on the misspoke. Just trying to get my bearings here. For some reason, I had a little bit of a frame drop in my screen, but now everything seems to be fine. Everything's all good. I didn't know if I had to reconnect my feed, but as we get a pan over of Winston, he has full cleared out his top side jungle, making his way directly over to the red buff. And it'll be around the 3-minute and 5 mark before he's able to finish, and this means that he can briefly look for either an invade or a mid lane look here before he makes his way over to contest for the bottom Scuttle Crab.
Where did Panda get 3 CS from? Did he not finish clearing out his Krugs camp?
Potentially.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's 20. Oh, he just never did it. Okay. All right. I understand a little bit more. He just never went up there because, 6 camps does mean it would be 24, but it hasn't been done just quite yet, so he just had an opportunity to pick up everything else on the map. But now, first one to the Scuttle Crab. Brandini going to come down and contest him there.
Well, Panda should be fine. Flash stun, though, from Brandini says that Panda has to burn his own flash. He's able to get out alive, but now a flash down onto the jungler of 100 Thieves next means that it's going to be a little bit more difficult for him to contest and get into these skirmishes without that escape tool, as they're just looking to further try to bully Panda out. Dinka's waiting here, but I mean, it's an orange, so you're not going to have that much combat advantage. They're forcing a teleport out of Young, though. Can they be able to get back and find an advantage here? Flash from Young means it's going to be first blood for Dinka. Now Panda's going to be able to pick up this Crocodile. And once again, we are in a position where 100 Thieves next, they're not afraid to fight back against Wildcard in the early game, as now Winston finds Young on the rotation, gets traded out by Panda, as now he's on the Lee Sin, but Bradley should be able to shift his way over the wall and get out safely.
I feel like we're seeing a lot of similar trends coming in from Wildcard, and I don't know how effective these are going to be in the long run. 100 Thieves have been doing a fantastic job responding, though, but Brandini might just find Dinka. Not quite.
Good flash, good flash.
Good flash. So it is like kind of crazy aggressive, right? I feel like Winston and Brandini walking up towards the Krugs made a lot of sense, right? You're trying to bully them off of this. Unfortunately for them, 100 Thieves next went for the teleport to the inner turret with Young, and I don't think Wildcard realized this, because I don't think they would have been willing to take this fight. Watch how Brandini goes back in. There's no way he does this if he thinks Young is here, and you see Winston has no cooldowns. He's just trying to do something. I think he smites away the Krugs, but then he still needs to leave, and the continued aggression doesn't stop, right? You see they see Young back in transition into the mid lane, and while they do pick this one up, it's another situation where they are very willing to make these like skill matchups and situations where it could easily go either way. They're taking every single one of these because they just think they're better.
Honestly, it makes for some really entertaining early gameplay, as Weiss tries to go for the hook on the Bradley, but is able to shift his way out on over. Daption battle dances to safety as well, and both the junglers in Winston and Panda show up to the mid lane just to make sure that the 3v3 doesn't devolve into anything more. Panda's going to get first roam on over. I don't think he can necessarily start up the dragon, but just as I say that, he started up, and a Wildcard Red might not be in a position to be able to contest.
I don't think most teams would try and contest this dragon, but this is Wildcard Red we're talking about. They're going to go for it.
100 Thieves next are able to secure the dragon. Now the question is, can they walk out safely? They just get the hook down on a Winston, force him to safeguard back into Bradley, but he gets a three-man shuffle right into, well, it's not necessarily a shuffle, they just push him right back, because Arrow is here on the flank, is going to pick up a double. Winston will fall for his efforts, as Pan is now able to pick up Daption on this recon, but Arrow is still looking for more kills, gets a Quadra before he finally goes down. Oh man, if we had seen a Penta on the Caitlyn, I would have lost my mind.
It's absolutely crazy, right? Even though they go for this kind of crazy fight where it's only Wildcard Red would really have gone for this fight, they are still able to find something. Dinka trying to find Bradley. I don't know if he's going to get anything more than that, but it is still some good damage. But on the opposite side of the map, notice that Brandini now has close to a 30 CS lead. He's crashing another wave into the turret, and Brandini, despite the fact that he doesn't have any kills, is still at least even in gold because of how dominant his actual laning has been.
And look how committed Wildcard are to try and shut out Panda on this Viego. They rotate Brandini on over to the jungle alongside Daption. And even though that Young does spot them out walking into the jungle, there's nothing that he can do about it because this wave is already pushing into him. He needs to make sure that he can catch it up. Winston takes away the red buff. He's going to pick up the Scuttle Crab as well. The gold lead isn't quite huge as we saw from Wildcard in the previous game, Josh, but
not yet.
I mean, yeah, I think that's the best words that you could have used. Not yet.
Yeah. I mean, we see just how aggressive they are in this fight. Typically, Caitlyn has a lot of laning advantage because of how long her range is, but she's down a level here. She's just gonna go in and just free hit with the lethal tempo, and ultimately, like, these chaotic fights that Wildcard have been taking with 100 Thieves are still just continuing to go in their favor because they are just so confident in their ability to take every single one of these fights. They're just moving around a little bit more proactively, and I feel like it's getting into 100 Thieves' head. When somebody is just like fighting you in a spot where you don't think that they can fight you, and they just go for it anyway, it's just kind of like in chess, when you see a move that you think is impossible and your opponent plays it anyway, you're like, oh god, what did I miss? What did they see that I don't? And sometimes you psych yourself out and the move was bad. But Wildcard are constantly doing it, and I think it's psyching these out.
They're trying to stay in the game, though. They have a Realm Warp. They're going to try to move Panda on over to make this flank happen onto Arrow, who has quite the bounty to pick up. They get the shutdown through Young, and now Daption is on the run. Death Charge comes out. Moonlight Vigil also will be enough damage to lock him down. It's a pretty damn clean dive from 100 Thieves next.
It was. I like the proactive moves that are coming out, right? They are kind of coming back and kind of making me eat my words. I don't think you make that move against a team that's psyching you out, right? Because it is such a scary proposition to go for proactive plays against teams that you think are better than you. But they are just so aggressive as well. They bring everybody down and say, hey, even if they are wildcard red, we're still playing the same champion. These plays will still work against them. And Brandini, Dinka, continues to just chill out up here. Brandini actually went with a Cole because he's just that confident that he's going to be not needing the extra combat stats that would normally be provided by that gold. He just wants the extra gold in a little bit later.
100 Thieves next trying to do the best that they can to hold on into this series as well as the game. They are currently the ones that have a slight gold advantage, but it's only 500, so it's not the biggest thing. And the way that we've seen Wildcard take commanding leads, it's not out of the question for them to just take it right on back. They look for the shuffle, only find Twice, but they have Brandini flanking over from the left side to lock down Young for the kill. The Conquering Sands as well as the Crocodile slice through Twice, picks up 2 total for Wildcard. And now Brandini does have to take recalls. He's quite low on HP, but the rest of Wildcard, especially with Caitlyn and Azir, should be pretty easy to get some turret damage.
This is the second time that Wildcard have also just proactively rotated Caitlyn into the mid lane to hit these structures. And it's going to mean that this mid lane turret's going to be going down as the first one, which is less common these days, right? It's a little bit more difficult to actually take this down with how much wave clear is typically in the mid lane, but it's going to be opening up the map quite a bit. And it's also going to be happening at a time where Wildcard now have an opportunity to recall all of their members, get some gold in their, actually spend their gold. They should be at the dragon in time, but as soon as I say that, Arrow and Daption instead going to be looking for a play onto Young.
Potentially. Doesn't seem like Young is in grave danger at this time. They're just catching the wave. Arrow's not going to get a chance to spend any extra gold yet. Dragon will spawn. 100 Thieves next did secure the first dragon of the game, and they're the ones that are first to the punch. They're the ones in position. Dinka does not have teleport, so looks like he's going to have to walk on the way back up to the top lane where Brandini is crashing a wave. The first 2 dragons have gone over to 100 Thieves next, and it's going to be an Ocean Soul this game. But for Wildcard, if they're able to blow up the gold lead, they won't even care the fact that 100 Thieves next took the first 2 dragons.
I'm a little bit surprised, honestly, that Wildcard didn't try and go for that fight, but I have to imagine it's because, Arrow's Caitlyn is probably sitting on an entire item completion at this point. They didn't want to actually spend it, or they didn't think that they would be able to contest it if they went back to spend it, so they're just like, yeah, we just won't contest it. We will make sure we get a little bit more gold, and now 100 Thieves are going to be trying to punish that.
Arrow and Daption might be in a bad spot here. They have a good charm. Winston is also here as well, and Bradley is making the counter gank. Arrow gets taken down, but it looks like the rest of Wildcard might be able to fight back here. Panda's looking for more resets, but thanks to Bradley and the Conquering Sands, it's able to just pierce through the remaining members of 100 Thieves next.
Just crazy, right? They are willing to take almost every single fight, and again, they're just coming out ahead, and they're going to be crashing more minions. We see that Arrow was, in fact, sitting on an entire Gale Force completion, and Brandini on the opposite side of the map, his CS lead has decreased a little bit simply because Dinka did get a couple of those kills, is a little bit stronger than he would have been otherwise, but it is a spot where Wildcard are starting to blow up the gold lead. They're now 3,000 gold ahead, and we saw once you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. Expect to see a lot more fights coming up very soon that Wildcard are just going to almost recklessly go for because they are convinced that they're going to win every interaction.
Gold lead is now a solid 3,000 in Wildcard's favor. And these fights that they have been able to consecutively win in the past few minutes, Josh, I mean, it's very, very similar to what we saw in Game 1, where at first in the beginning, there were some fights that 100 Thieves were able to contest. pretty handily against Wildcard, but then ever so slowly it gets to the mid game, and Wildcard know not only when to take fights, but also how to win those fights as well. As you know, we already talked about it before. Wildcard just have such a damn good understanding of how to approach fights and skirmishes and utilizing their champions to the best of their ability, while also knowing how to play against the champions that 100 Thieves Next have drafted. And Winston and Brandini, I don't think they're going for this dive quite yet, as they gotta wait for the minion wave, but Dinka is in a
Waiting for cooldowns.
pretty scary spot. They're just going to try to auto the turret. Dinka knocks him up with the Searing Charge, but now Brandini's just popping the Dominus, and now the rest of the cavalry is here, and Wildcard Red say good night, sweet prince, to Dinka as they send him to the Shadow Realm.
But look at what's happening on the opposite side of the map. We are seeing a response coming out from 100 Thieves. They are pushing waves underneath and forcing Arrow out of the lane. He tried to pick up the red buff, it looks like, but not going to be able to secure that either. Instead, just going to be proactively rotating towards the mid lane. And I like the fact that he's just kind of getting out of dodge. He does need to be careful of another dive.
Oh, well, Instinct.
Oh, yeah, Instinct.
He's the one that's got to be careful about getting swept up under the rug. Bradley comes in with a nice Shurima shuffle. And now 100 Thieves Next, without their marksman player, they're pretty low on damage apart from Young and Panda. They're going to have to get on out. Panda's already pulling off a cheeky recall within the heart of Wildcard's jungle. Can't say the same about Gweiss. Young has popped the phase rush movement speed, but Dasher will lock him up thanks to that grand entrance. And Wildcard, the gold lead climbs to 6,000.
The Goon Squad starts rotating. They were up top lane, remember? They went for a 4-man dive onto Dinka. They walked to mid. They found a kill there. They walked to bot lane. They found 2 kills there. And it's almost like they don't really need to go for all this farm, yet they still maintain even or better farm across the map because they are just doing a fantastic job setting up their waves. They're never giving anything back. And Winston, every single time they find one of these kills, is able to walk into 100 Thieves jungle and take it away. I think I've used this quote a couple of times, but again, Sun Tzu says, one basket of rice taken from your enemies worth 2 of your own. Every single time you take away one of these jungle cans, it's effectively denying one from them and giving you an extra one. So it's worth a whole lot more than your own.
And I remember the first time you busted out an Art of War quote on the broadcast, and I was just like, oh my god, so cool. Yeah.
I like how a lot of like Sun Tzu's quotes in like the Art of War are basically like, you know, if you are outnumbered, you probably shouldn't fight.
No, really?
Yeah, it's like, great, thank you. My other favorite one is like, have you considered lying to your opponents?
Ah, true. I mean, that's why we see things like decoy strats from Wukong, or LeBlanc plays as well. Shaco, if he ever gets played. Oh, please don't play Shaco, man. I mean...
Okay. Well, we'll get to that. We got a fight going on. This is for Gweiss.
Okay. Well, Gweiss, no dredge line. And the cooldown will come back up just in a minute, but Winston going for the kick, finds Instinct. Knockup from Searing Charge from Dinka is going to try to buy some time, but Instinct, or I think it even was Young that got knocked up. It doesn't matter at this point, Josh.
They're all gone.
They're all dead.
Oh god, Brandini just waiting for that E to come back up. There's no real place for Instinct to get out of. You see the scared crab come through, and this is why a lot of teams kind of forego the first 2 dragons, because you don't necessarily need to get them. They're not a win condition on their own. If you can get to 3, it becomes a lot scarier. But Wildcard just very happy to pick up all the towers, very happy to pick up the Rift Herald in order to continue taking structures. And now with such a large gold lead, it is impossible for 100 Thieves to really contest any of these fights whatsoever, just because they are so far behind in gold. Arrow already on an item and a half, right? Everybody else on the team is going to be skyrocketing to their second item here in just a sec.
And they're already making his way towards that Lord Dominic's regards, just to make sure that not even Dinka, who is stacking a ton of armor, can withstand the oppressive blows and shots from Arrow's Caitlyn. Lord Dominic's regards will be completed. We get a chance to see how this fight breaks out as well, and really determine who got kicked. I thought it was Instinct, but it looks like it is actually Young.
Yep. Young gets kicked in. Unfortunately, it puts everything back so far, right? Because as soon as Gweiss ends up going for the hook and hitting the wall, you no longer have control of how the fight is actually going to start. You see that they have to use a bunch of their ultimates defensively, and Winston, just too fast for them, locks them down before the fight even starts. And even though they get all of their abilities off, the abilities don't do nearly as much when you don't have any DPS to back.
And Instinct still has quite a ways to go before he can effectively start doing damage that Wildcard Red have to respect. Going for the shield bow means that he's a bit more durable and a bit more defensive, but I don't even know if the second item is going to be enough for him, as it's... I know we've seen things like the Gale Force Collector build as something that Danny from Evil Genius's LCS roster popularized a lot and just showed that even Aphelios can put out a ton of damage and be almost like an assassin. But not this game, as Instinct has to flash over the wall because a bunch of wildcard goons are trying to kill him.
Yeah, he's going to get assassinated if he's not careful, so he has to back away from that one as well. You see that they do crash some minions down in the bottom lane, but they are doing it at a time where Bradley's able to clean it up, and a Riftworld's going to be crashing into the mid lane, so it's very difficult for 100 Thieves to respond to any of these structures going down. Riftworld should be getting another crash, and I feel like Arrow's just doing this for poke pretty consistently, right? Just like, hey, you know, you can't walk up. I will shoot you with my gun, and everybody's like, oh no, he shot me with his gun. Who could have foreseen this?
Sounded like Smacks, one of our other colleagues and co-casters, as one of my favorite quotes is literally during call. He just goes, "Shoot him with your gun! Get him, Caitlyn!" Unfortunately for him, he was in a solo queue game, and his Caitlyn that he was supporting was not doing that. Thankfully for Wildcard, Arrow is doing a pretty good job of shooting them with his gun. Yes,
he has been doing a pretty good job of that. Remember when he got a quadra kill?
Yes.
Yeah, that was this game. He is very strong. He is skyrocketing through this mid game, which is supposed to be Caitlyn's trough. And that's the big thing. If you can get Caitlyn to like 3-4 items, you are very strong. But typically, between 1 and 3 items, you're not super excited to have a Caitlyn on your team, and he's just so far ahead of the curve that doesn't matter.
Well, they kicked Panda right through Dinka, giving them a little bit of a knock-up. Panda might have thought that he was being kicked away to safety, but they still have enough gap closing ability between all 3 of these members in Wildcard to lock down Panda, ensuring that he's got nowhere else to run. The map is very open for the taking here, Mr. Joshi, because 100 Thieves next, they are trying to defend themselves at the base. Only one outer turret remains in that bottom lane, which Bradley is currently working towards, but the first inhibitor turret will fall, and now 100 Thieves next have an exposed inhibitor.
We'll see how Wildcard actually wants to pick this up. They are continuing to get all of their waves pushed. Notice that pretty much every time we look at the minimap, every single wave is on 100 Thieves' side of the map, because Wildcard are always making sure that they do things when they actually have time to do them. So now, as they come over here, they don't have a lot of a minion wave, but they do have the next one coming up relatively soon, and they don't even need it. Gweiss goes wide again.
That's unfortunate. Okay, well, if the first one didn't succeed, try again. But the Ember's Divide just pushes Gweiss over to the right side of the map. Arrow almost getting locked down, but is able to dodge out of 1, 2, 3. Arrow is still alive! God! No one can kill this man. Gale Force Flash, and even the Piltover Caliber Net keeps him alive through everything, and he picks up a kill off the back of it thanks to the ace in the hole on the Dinka. Instinct getting kicked away, but Winston is still in hot pursuit. Instinct might be able to live for now.
Don't do it.
Wave. You know you want to do it. They get him down, they burst through the Immortal Shield Bow, and oh my goodness, it is an ace. Who could have foreseen this, Josh? Definitely not us.
Well, I'm a little bit surprised that they aren't even picking up the inhibitor right now. Instead, they do devote Arrow to go down, pick up this Ocean Dragon, which gives them their second one of the game, but then they can just back away, right? They don't need to take any unnecessary risks. They don't need to give their opponents opportunities for plays, and Bradley might have stuck around just a bit too long, but they're both out over the wall. Gweiss, again, not going to be landing that hook, and it's going to be meaning that 100 Thieves don't have anything left to do.
So give them a time to reset as we get a chance. I just want to see how close Arrow got to almost die.
It was very low, right? Like, he was kind of left on his own. You get a couple of stuns, you get a couple of roots, but there's just not enough damage. Daption does a good job body blocking, and after that, he's just able to create enough space. It's really impressive to watch, like, how well he's able to stay alive and how much trust Daption has in him to just keep him alive throughout all of these fights, and knowing that he's still going to be pumping out the DPS the entire time.
Diving past the inhibitor turret. Oh, we got more fights in the top jungle. Daption getting locked up by Gweiss' dredge line, and Daption, even though critically low, goes for a 4-man knockup. And here comes Bradley with the scoop to whoop. All of the members.
Penta?
Is that
No!
It's just a quadra for Bradley. Brandini takes away the penta, unfortunately. Bradley, in shame, says, all right, well, I'm just going to teleport to this control ward. But Wildcard Red, if you didn't know them before, this is Wildcard. This is their strength. So for all Academy teams watching, if you didn't know who they were, you better know who they are, because they are coming for your title, and Wildcard will not be trifled with easily.
Honestly, really impressive stuff. There were some, very aggressive things they went for in the early game, and they got punished for it. And that's something that some of the stronger teams might be able to take advantage of later on. But Wildcard's Red early mid-game and actual mid-game are so incredibly strong in their ability to rotate people and just take all these fights, because they know that they are better, and they just go for all of these skirmishes. Just means that it is very difficult for a lot of teams who are not ready for this unbridled aggression to do anything about.
There's these moments like in game 2 and even game 1, 100 Thieves Next did their best to try and match the aggression of Wildcard, and ensuring that, like, hey, they weren't just going to be able to walk all over them for free and just get advantages, but Wildcard always able to just inch out an advantage every single time. And the funny thing is that throughout these skirmishes in the mid game, nothing ever exploded into like a 6,000, 7,000 gold lead just from one fight. It was always a series of fights, but every single time it went from 1,000 to 2,000 to 4,000 to 5,000, and then suddenly Wildcard have a full item completion over their opponents, and it's like, okay, yeah, well, we just win every single fight, but we always have the confidence to win every single fight. So it doesn't even matter how big the gold lead is, we will always take one because we just believe we're that much better players.
It's also really impressive to see that, unlike a lot of teams that will go for the fight and then call it a day, Wildcard are pretty much always going to pick up a little bit more afterwards. They are fantastic at getting more than they would have initially expected, right? They get a couple of camps, they get a turret, they get a dragon, they get a herald. They always find another tool to actually pick up for themselves. They get a little bit more than the kills, whereas whenever we saw 100 Thieves come out ahead of some of these skirmishes, they don't get a whole lot more out of it because of how well Wildcard have pushed their waves. They know that even if they lose the fight, it's going to be just the kills. The kills are nice, but they're just kills. It's only 300 gold. A full turret is worth way more than that.
Yeah, just absolute destruction and domination from Wildcard. Even in the scariest moments, once they put themselves into this spot, it's almost there's not a word to really justly describe how ferocious the gameplay is from Wildcard. And you even saw it in the moment there where they dedicated everything from 100 Thieves Next to try and take down Arrow in that last pick. It didn't even matter because not only enough trust and adaption keeps him alive, but then just the counter-engage, the re-engage from the rest of the members is so good. Even this moment, Daption just buying enough time for Bradley to then come over the wall, almost the Penna. Unfortunately, Brandini last hits one of these members here in Panda as Bradley denied a Penta on the LCS stage here.
You do what you can, right? So far, Armeo, the only one to get a pentakill, I believe, in the Proving Grounds thus far. We've seen 2 quadras in one game, one from Arrow, one from Bradley, so it's very possible that we're going to be seeing a little bit more. But we also have to remember this was probably going to be one of the most dominant games coming out from Wildcard. But to tell us a little bit more about it, we're going to be throwing to a Verizon post-game interview.
Is actually going to be with Mr. Daption,
hey,
the support for Wildcard. First of all, congratulations on the very dominating series victory, homie. My first question to you, I actually, what was comms like when Brandini took away the Penna from Bradley? What happened there?
That's actually so funny because we were talking about it, and then Bradley was like screaming at the top of his lungs, going like, "Give me Penta, give me Penta!" And I was like, "Holy shit, it's actually gonna be his Penta!" And I don't even know what stole it. I think it was like Renekton ulti or something. And
yeah, his Renekton's W. He goes in at the very end to take it away.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, it was hype as hell, but I mean, maybe next time he'll get a Penta.
Maybe next time. I mean, both him and Arrow had quadras this game, almost pentas this game, and it was a very, very impressive performance. I mean, you know, we were kind of talking about it on the broadcast that, like, hey guys, you know, we're going to cut straight to the point. Wildcard Red, very good team. They should win this series. You know, 100 Thieves next. They're probably the most that they can do is try to make them sweat a little bit. And you know, to their credit, in the early game, the first 5 minutes, there was a little bit of trading back and forth. What were comms like during that situation, despite kind of the not necessarily just surefire wins from you guys in the early game? Was there just like, okay, guys, you know, it's whatever. They can have a few kills. We still win this game, or you know, is it something else?
I mean, no, we have like the motto of like never underestimate your like opponents. So we never like for once thought like, oh, these players are worse than us, so we're gonna just like fucking, you know, destroy them. It's just like when we made a mistake, I remember at like Blue Buff with me and Winston, like we just like kept our heads up high and just, you know, tried to do our best, and we just brought it back. So just goes to
There
show
you
the
go.
power of our team and the spirit we have, you know.
Yeah, I was really impressed with how you guys were actually able to rotate around the map, and you in particular were so pivotal to so many of these engages. Could you tell us a little bit more about like how the communication goes? Is there like a strategic shot caller and like a tactical shot caller? Or how do you guys decide what fights you want to go for?
I mean, I think it's just like a general team sense and like what fights we take and what fights we don't take. I mean, we have like so many, all of our players are like experienced to the point where we'll know like in a snap decision, like, will we be able to win this fight or not? And I mean, I
Mhm.
think that's just, it's just like all five players. We know when a fight is winning, when a fight is losing, and we're able to like act on that. It's not just one person, but if it was to like if we were to talk about like movements on the map, it would probably be Winston. He's like a pivotal point on our team. He like most of the time like he'll be moving everyone around the map saying Daption, can you come here, can you come here, and those are the plays that are going to win us the game. So thank Winston for that.
Yeah, I mean, well, we know that Winston has had a stellar summer performance here. You know, uh, coming from spring team when he was on Team Redacted with Tuesday and the rest of the other players.
Yeah.
Winston was kind of viewed as one of the weaker players, but he has come out and he has made a statement as not only the best jungler out of semi-pro, but also a jungler to be contended with going into Proving Grounds. My final question to you, Daption, is looking at the rest of the teams who I know I asked your coach about some of the teams that you guys are fearing the most. For you, who is a player, you know, that you really want to like test your strength, your individual playing abilities against in this tournament?
Well, it'd probably have to be like the first and the second seed in the academy teams. Like I think that Ayla is like, I don't know. Some people tell me he's bad, some people tell me he's good, but I don't know. When I play against him, there's like so much pressure, and I'm like, what the fuck? You know, like if I walk up for like a Leona Q, like he knows what to do in those moments, and then, I mean, it's just like C9 to I don't know. It's just so hard to play against those players. I think compared to other players. So I think you know Isles and Ayla are probably the worst matchups for me, but I'll try my best, and you know we'll try to pull a win out of that one.
All right. Well, the big thing, it sounds like you guys have a lot of big games ahead of you. We talked a little bit about that. I also want to ask a little bit about the mindset coming into this tournament, right? Because you guys are very clearly the strongest team coming in from the amateur semi-pro side of things. Do you guys also think that you guys are very clearly the strongest team in all of Proving Grounds, or who do you have respect for?
Uh, I mean, we all like to think we're the best at what we do, and I mean, I think the reason why we're coming to Proving Grounds is to prove ourselves and prove to other people that you know we are the best and we want to be the best in this region. And you know, I'm really expecting every player on this team to you know like move up to Academy LCS. It just like I know immediately ever since I started playing with these players, it's like a completely different world. And for example, solo queue is just such a different game from competitive. Like this,
Yeah.
you don't get that experience in solo queue, and yeah, I mean, we're here to prove ourselves, and we're gonna try to go for first place.
The Pokemon training arc comes and begins now for you, man. Trying to prove yourself to be the very best that no one ever was. Again, before we let you go, feel free to plug yourself or give any shout-outs. And again, really great stuff today, man.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to shout out number one, my mom. Actually, she was the one who
Let's go.
encouraged me. She encouraged me to do really well today, and she was like, "I believe in you, Sam. You can do this." And honestly, we hadn't practiced recon that much in like scrims, so I wasn't really expecting much coming to first game. But wow, really, her encouragement just like popped off that first game. So thanks to her for that. And then all of my friends, Minui, Drexer. I'm not going to name all of them, but I love you all and everyone on my team. Thank you so much for being on this ride with me. And here's to more games together.
Let's go, man. Good stuff. Congratulations on the series. We'll see you next time, and best of luck and for the rest of the week.
Thank you for having me.
Gives a shout out to his mom. That's
What do we say? Daption's a cutie, man.
yeah. That's so dope, man. Honestly, parents in esports are the true MVPs. They're so underrated and they don't get enough love and they don't get enough credit. So awesome. I've actually had the pleasure to interact with a lot of parents of the players in this Proving Grounds tournament, and all of them have been super awesome and super encouraging of their children. And I don't know what to say, Josh. Save me. I might get emotional in just a little bit. Oh man.
It's okay. It's okay. I mean, we do get to see just like how effective that everything has been, right? And you need that kind of support system to continue supporting you throughout all of these tournaments, right? Because it's a stressful time. A lot of these players are not necessarily earning a whole lot of money from actually playing with these teams. It is a situation where a lot of these players are putting their entire livelihoods on the line in order to try and compete, and we get to see the ones who have that support are really succeeding just because they know that people are believing in them. They know that there are ways for them to continue pushing forward, and I feel like Daption is a perfect example of that.
Just no words, man. I honestly, just beautiful stuff. Congratulations to Wildcard. They'll move on further into the upper bracket, which we should repay a visit to now that we have made changes within the system. So we get this chance to see where 100 Thieves next are going to go, now dropping into the lower bracket. With the result of today's changes, Wildcard will move on further into round 2. Cloud9 Academy and Resolve, the victor of those two will face Wildcard, whereas the loser of that match will then move on down towards the lower bracket. Tomorrow, we will be seeing those matches, as well as Evil Geniuses Academy and Golden Guardians Academy, as both of the victors are going to be determining the other opponents of the two round 2 matches that we have after determining both 100 Thieves Academy and Wildcard as the victors. And honestly, Josh, the way that things have panned out so far, we're pretty spot on with our predictions, which feels good. For us in terms of credibility, but also I think there's a lot to look forward to, especially for the teams, even though they are moving on through the lower bracket instead.
Yeah, I also want to paint a quick picture for a lot of people, because I feel like after Cloud9 versus Resolve, I think most people are looking at this as likely a Cloud9 victory because of how strong they were during playoffs for Academy, and that means that they are most likely to go up against Wildcard Red. So in some senses, we're going to be getting a very, very strong matchup very early on in the tournament, because Wildcard Red coming in as a 7th seed, whereas all the Academy seeds are going, the top 6 are all above them. And so that means that the 2nd seed going up against the 7th happens very early on, and we might see one of these, we will end up seeing one of these teams getting knocked down to the lower bracket and having to see them make this monster run in order to try and make it far in the tournament.
I mean, Daption did just say, I'm pretty scared of both Ayla and Isles, and if Cloud9 beat Resolve, then that would be the support matchup that Daption would have to watch out for. But thankfully, he's got a full squad on his side. It's not just a 1v1, it's a full-on 5-on-5. It is a team effort in trying to become the very best in this Proving Grounds tournament. But on behalf of the broadcast staff and crew, we want to thank every one of you for all tuning in to this broadcast. It's been a fun blast, and for me and Josh, this is the first time that we've casted together in a hot minute, so it was a nice reunion for both of us. We hope to still be doing more work together on the Proving Grounds broadcast, whether we're casting together or if we're on the same desk. But thank you all so much again for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow, same time. Until then, have a great night.